Hi, everybody. I'm Mark Sheeran,
I'm Michelle Dunbar.
and we co-wrote The Freedom Model for Addictions, Escape the Treatment and Recovery Trap. And we've been coaching people how to solve their addiction now for 34 years. We created the coaching model for the addiction space 34 years ago.
Yeah, we didn't call it that, but
Yeah.
it is what we've always done.
Yeah. So we want to talk a little bit about what we're doing. About a year ago, we started doing workshops for people, and 2-day workshops where we deconstruct their binge construct. Essentially, we show people why they do what they do.
Yeah.
And that's Michelle and I working with them. And
Like one person at a time, because it has to be personalized for that person.
That's right. So they spend 2 days with us, and then they also get support sessions after they go back home. And then also we give support sessions all the way out for 1 full year if they need it. Not everybody needs that, but that's what we do. So we started this like a year ago, and all of a sudden I said to Michelle, geez, we're booking up now pretty quick. And so we just got on the computer and we set up all the dates, which we're going to make live here soon, for this year. And I said, we better do a commercial and let people know that we're available because
we want to work with you.
Yeah. Yeah. I was coached in the early years by her father, and then I coached Michelle.
Yep.
And so we've been doing this a long time, and we want to help you. You know, some people can learn with the book, some people can learn with our online program and all the various things that we do. But ultimately, there's a whole group of people that are in pretty deep, and they're mystified as to why they're doing what they're doing, and they're struggling, and it's needless because we can show you how to get past this for good. No meetings, no endless mat regimens, no recovery, no struggle.
Yeah, we will be your personal coaches.
Yeah.
And we want to work with you. So you look on the website. If you see a date that works for you, book it, because they're going to go quickly. But if you don't see a date that works for you, then call us and we will figure out a date that works for both of us mutually, and we can make a plan. And as soon as you book it, you will become an online program member as well. You get that membership for an entire year, and you can start that right away as soon as you book it. So if you want to call us, and you're watching, it's in the top corner, 888-424-2626. That comes directly to Mark and I, and we will talk about when you can fly in and meet with us.
Yeah. We look forward to it.
We
All
do.
right. Take care, everybody.
Welcome to the Addiction Solution Podcast. I'm Michelle Dunbar. Enjoy listening and watching as addiction experts Mark Sheeran and I cover controversial as well as helpful topics on addiction, how to move past it, and other related subjects. As two of the co-founders of the Freedom Model, Mark and I will give you a completely new perspective on the topics that matter to you. We will take to task the Recovery Society's lies and misinformation and replace them with facts, research, and the methods to move on from addiction struggles without 12-step meetings, rehabs, and the shackles of endless recovery. Let's escape the treatment and recovery trap together and learn to be free. Welcome to the truth.
Hi, everybody.
Hey, welcome to the Addiction Solution. I'm Michelle Dunbar.
And I'm Mark Sheeran, and we are the authors of The Freedom Model for Addictions, Escape the Treatment and Recovery Trap. And ironically, along with Stephen Slate also did a big bulk of the amount of writing in that book. So we give him credit always.
Yeah.
I just want to talk about today's topic is going to be an interesting topic. But before I get into that, I just want to talk about if you need any help with understanding the Freedom Model and how to apply it in your life, or maybe you're struggling with your binge construct, the reasons behind your drinking or drugging, that sort of thing. And if you find yourself still binging, you may need some help, and that's what we're here for. So always remember that we have coaching. You can come to one of our workshops where you spend a couple of days with Michelle and I, or we can coach you from the comfort of home as well over Zoom.
Yep. So today, Mark watched a very disturbing documentary last night, and it really sparked a conversation this morning about
just how desperate people become
Yeah.
to, especially parents of kids that are acting out or
Troubled kids.
troubled
That's what,
kids, right?
right.
There's a whole troubled kid industry that really has its roots in fundamentalist religion and honestly AA.
Oh no, it definitely has it, the terminology, the techniques. They even use the same slogans as AA. It comes directly out of AA and then Synanon, which was the attack therapy model, where they coined attack therapy, which is group therapy, and everybody attacks you.
It's like tough love on steroids.
Well, yeah, they created tough love. They created
Mhm.
that movement. Synanon did. And it's literally called attack therapy, where they put you in the hot seat and your peers tear you to shreds to break you down. But it's worse than that. The things that I witnessed. So if you want to see a documentary about this and what's going on right
and it's
now,
still going on.
well, and it's proliferating. It's actually increasing in power, money, and the amount of kids being shuffled into these places. The suicide rates are astronomically high, on double digits. The deaths, the beatings, the abuse, the rapes, the things that are happening to these children is, it was so hard for me to watch because, but here's what happened when I was watching it. It's called The Program, and it's specifically about the Ivy Ridge School for Youth for Troubled Teens and Kids, some as young as 7. It was so freaking disturbing. They've closed the place since then. They've closed like 3 of them, but 300 others have popped up across the country and now the globe. They do a lot of them out of country to make more money. These situations are worth billions of dollars, and there's basically like 5 different players that are all making the money. And the main guy has disappeared, but has never been arrested. And there's been no arrests, ironically enough, with all of this going on, and it's all documented. So what this is they have a school for troubled kids. There's a point to this that I want to get to about rehab and that sort of thing. But what they do is they take vulnerable parents, they send promotional materials, they're on the internet, and they send transportation services. Basically, they have guys come to your house, big men with cuffs. They wake your child up. The parents sign up for this.
They do. Not only they sign up, they pay tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars for this service.
So these guys show up, they wake your kid up in the middle of the night with the lights off and kidnap them and lock them in these schools because they maybe misbehaved, whatever it might be, troubled teens, right? God knows I would have been ripe for this. And so, and then the projection to the parents is that this is a holistic sort of approach. There's lots of outdoor activities, but all I'm going to tell you is watch the show, the documentary. It's called The Program, and you'll see how they manipulate parents. The parallels between this industry and the rehab industry is identical. It's identical because this came from Synanon, which was the original, therapeutic community, abusive therapeutic community that was closed down. But all of this, if you go back, has roots to Bill Wilson and the ego deflation at depth model that Bill Wilson and Dr. Silkworth came up with. Now, I just want to personalize this a little bit because as I'm watching this, I couldn't place what was bothering me so much. And my wife asked me, she looked at me, she goes, "Are you okay?" I said, "I am not okay. This is really fucking bothering me." And so what it was my mother was a product of this, and she ran, she was a counselor. So she
worked in a therapeutic community.
Yeah, she worked in different halfway houses, and and a lot of you know my story. I was smuggled into the halfway houses as a kid, and because I wasn't supposed to be there. I don't know why my other siblings or how they get out of it because they weren't around. It was just me.
You were the little guy.
Yeah, I just don't understand how that happened. I can't remember. My mom has since passed on. My parents are gone. But what I realized is that my mom was never my mother. She took on the role of what these facilities do to kids. She did that with me. Um, and the gaslighting and the guilt mongering and the shaming and the quiet manipulation. And I never had a mother. That's what I realized last night. Now, I've always known that, but I never was able to articulate it until last night, because as I'm watching these kids describe what they went through in that school, I said, holy shit, I went through that at home.
Right.
And then when my parents split up, my father remarried to a woman that absolutely hated me and I hated her. And I never had a home. I never felt I was completely rejected by my parents. And I'm listening to how these kids, they were never allowed to see their parents while they were in these schools and or have any contact. It was all censored and abused. And so the kids felt like, why have I been abandoned by my family? Meanwhile, the family over here is thinking they're doing the right thing and listening to the staff saying, don't let them leave. Don't have any contact with them. This is what the program demands. You want your kid to come back changed, right? And the parents are like, yeah. Well, keep paying. We're doing the job for you. And they're presenting this really wonderful situation when it was, they were killing kids. They've literally killed kids on camera. You can watch it. It's so disturbing. So for me, watching that, I realized AA was the source of this whole chain of circumstances that we find today, an industry of abuse, gaslighting. And I think that was the hardest part for me in my home. My mom here's a tactic she would do. My mom was a master at manipulating. And so here I was with this mother that didn't really, I don't think, loved me. I really don't think she loved me. I think she didn't want to have 12 kids, and she left when I was 7. And so anytime I would see her, she would go on these crying jags. Now, mind you, she's running the girls' ward at a rehab as a expert in human psychology, right? And so every time I would see her, she would cry and carry on about some guilty thing and how I was a bad kid and all this stuff, and that I needed treatment and I needed counseling because of the divorce and her own sick little guilty pleasures she would inflict on her children. I watched her do it with my sisters too. It was really, really mean. And then I can remember saying to her, and I would immediately as a child feel horribly guilty that my mom was crying and carrying on in this really disturbing way. And then she would look at me with just menace and say, that's on you. Now, this is with a 7-year-old boy.
Yeah.
And she's like, I'm not making you feel guilty. And I'm like, oh. Then I felt even worse, like I'm a total piece of shit. And then I started to question my own thoughts,
right?
And that was highly destructive manipulation. And that shit went on endlessly.
Yep.
And then I would go home to my father and my stepmother, whom hated me. And I was in a house that was separated from them with my siblings. And I was just a kid that just couldn't contain my hate. I would project it out too. And then that built an entire thing until eventually I was out of the house and I was never allowed home. I have never stepped foot in my home since that time. 4 years after I left home, I met my dad. We had a really good time for the first time in our lives. We had a nice talk. We were pulling in the driveway and he stops the car and he goes, you can't come on the property. I said, Dad, I got my life together. I just graduated practically number 1 in my class, and he's like, no, I'm very proud of you, but you're not allowed on the property because of my stepmother. I mean, it was so insane. And I think about that now, that from the age of 7 till I was 24 at this point, I never knew what home was because of AA.
Right.
It all had its roots in ego deflation at depth.
Yes.
Manipulation.
You had to be broken.
Yeah.
You had to be broken down
to be fixed.
Somehow to be fixed. And look at, I did a video recently where I said, stop sending your adolescents and young adults to rehab. Stop sending them to addiction treatment. That's what it's based on. It's based on breaking down your kid to the point where do you honestly want them to never again trust their own thinking?
Yeah, it's so fucking
That
bad.
is what it's based
so
on.
Bad. It's so bad.
And so this video or this documentary that he watched is the extreme of that. But make no mistake,
it's the norm now.
This is what vulnerable parents are being told needs to happen to fix their child. But it isn't fixing their child. It isn't. It has increased rates of suicide.
Massively.
It has increased rates of mental health problems. It has increased rates of dangerous binge usage and people really going off the deep end, right? It was interesting because he was telling me about that. And I had recently watched, I think it was a Dateline, where it was about this young man who had hired a friend to kill his parents. He had been sent away to one of these places. The parents, and it was interesting because the father, who ended up surviving the attack that killed his wife, went blind. And you could see he had some remorse for sending his son, who was a troubled teen, to one of these places that was outside the country. Now, and he paid them 6 figures to literally abuse his son.
Yeah.
To abuse and torture his son. And, and so this kid, he ended up hiring somebody to kill them.
Yeah, it's the ramifications of this sort of thing. I look back when we started the retreat and how hard it was to be. See, I didn't know any.
We didn't know any of that stuff was going on.
Oh no, I didn't have any clue. I came out of that model, and I didn't know anything but that model.
Yeah, true.
And you and your father were basically in that same boat. Maybe not
to that extreme, but my father ruled with an iron fist, and he was abusive to us growing up, and he, he also learned that model in AA.
Yeah, and the manipulation and all that sort of gaslighting,
the guilt, the shame, the breaking people down,
shaming,
yes,
right, actively shaming. So when we got to the retreat, when we started the retreat, I think we had already figured out, when I met him, your father had already figured out that was bad.
Yeah,
and
we knew we're not gonna abuse people,
and we had done enough research to realize that, oh my God, what I had lived through and what your father had figured out being in AA years prior, that was wacky.
Yeah.
And you have to understand, this is in the late 80s, and Synanon wasn't that long ago at that point. Right. This is in the 60s and 70s. All this crazy stuff was going on. This whole movement of enlightenment and self-help and abuse, really.
Yeah.
So we barely had our feet on the ground with a different model. And thankfully, the key that your father had figured out is that nobody is powerless. So once you do that, you put a knife in the control model, because once you tell somebody they're not powerless, they're empowered to make their own decisions.
Right.
And so you literally flip the whole script away from that. But so we had the lack of powerlessness narrative, that's what we were promoting, but then we were still in AA.
Well, yeah,
it was this weird 12-year odyssey of trying to figure out, are we crazy to think that people are empowered, or is that really the way? Because we were constantly still immersed in AA meetings and doing the research. And I think that's why the freedom model is so profound, is because we lived leaving that shit behind and
Yeah.
grew out of true tyranny, true painful, gaslit narcissists inflicting pain upon us. And I know in my case, it was my own family,
Yeah.
you know, um, and then looking AA in the eye and saying, I think that's crazy,
Well,
you know?
we threw out the powerlessness, and the powerlessness was there. It's set up so people can be controlled
Yeah,
and
completely,
manipulated.
completely.
And it's so effective. It's so incredibly effective that we didn't even recognize that the rest of the steps were still about that.
I know. It's that. Well, that's what the 12 years was.
Yeah.
That-
It's like your character defects. You're broken,
Yeah,
right? You're bad. You're morally bankrupt. You're spiritually bankrupt. All of these things, you shouldn't even be thinking the way you're thinking. It's called stinking thinking,
yeah,
right? And all of it's so effective that when anybody talks against it, there are people in the cult that will come out and say, well, thank God I was brainwashed. Thank God I was broken
yeah.
down.
It's a good cult.
It's a good cult. It saved my life. It enslaved you is what it's done.
Yeah, it's made you blind to the truth of your own autonomy.
It's made you complicit in abusing people.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that's another hard part is in that process of that 12 years, I did the best I could with the knowledge I had at every given day, and the progress was quite profound through that 12 years. But I'm so glad we got rid of powerlessness, but we still had controlling methods.
Oh, for sure.
In the early days. I was saying AA crap
Oh,
for
yeah.
years.
Oh, yeah.
For years, and working within that structure. It chills me today to think about. I'm amazed after watching the documentary. I am completely amazed we escaped
Me too.
because we were screwed up,
Yeah.
for a long time. But the difference between what the research we ended up doing and these other facilities was they just want to make money, and we didn't.
No.
We didn't make any money for that 12 years. Zero. We didn't make a single paycheck. We didn't take any third-party reimbursement. We didn't have politicians backing us, which these schools do. We didn't have the scam. There was no scam. There was none of that. So our intentions mattered.
Yeah.
Our heart mattered. We wanted to know the truth, which was exceedingly painful to find, because when you say you're not powerless, but then we're going to meetings where you're teaching powerlessness, right? We
Yep.
weren't, but you're hearing it.
But we're
constantly.
hearing it every day.
It's like this dichotomy
It was.
with the people we were trying to teach, and it was so confusing.
Yeah.
It was so confusing. And I just want people to know that we're experts in that purgatory because we lived it for years and years and years. I immersed myself in that retreat because I think last night watching that, I don't think I realized that I needed that retreat experience to save myself. I was so fucked up as a kid and so manipulated that I had to figure out how to think for myself. That's what my research career was about in the beginning.
Yeah.
Was sorting through with others in a house, figuring out that's crazy, I think. But this over here makes people feel good and empowered. I'm going to go in that direction. And then I followed those breadcrumbs, and your father did too.
Yeah.
And we made a lot of mistakes because we came out of a cult.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
The most powerful, largest cult in the world.
Yeah. Yeah.
Look, I do understand when you have somebody you love, especially a child, even whether the child is 16 or 35 or whatever, when you see them heavily using drugs, heavily drinking, their trips to the hospital, being arrested, all this stuff is going on, and you're desperate. I understand those parents. I've worked with those parents for over 30 years. I know where that goes. I raised 3 sons. I know when you're desperate, you're so vulnerable that anything sounds anything that sounds at all plausible,
Yeah.
you're going to do, and you're going to spend any amount of money to try and
Yeah.
save your kid.
Yeah.
So you become, well, you become prey to these people that literally have no interest in helping your child. Now, the person that you're talking to on the phone, the one that's selling you these programs, maybe they have good intentions, but I don't think so.
Well, when you see the documentary, you realize that these, whether it's a therapeutic community in the drug and alcohol field or the troubled teen industry, they are so
They're indoctrinated.
well, they're so abusive
Yeah.
that when they interviewed, and it's interesting to watch, so watch for this, when they interviewed past employees, this girl had such guts, man. She goes right into the belly of the beast and starts talking to these people and gets them on camera saying things that is shocking. All of them were like, no, I knew it was wrong. I knew it was wrong.
Yeah.
This, you know, and they talk about abusing people and how bigoted they were, and how one of the ladies, you can just tell she liked it. She's smiling and just demented. I think they picked people that had no credentials. They didn't train anybody. There were no teachers on staff. There was no credentialing. There's no regulation. There's nothing. They're completely open-ended scenarios, and they still are to this day. To this day, it's shocking. And this has all been brought up in front of Congress, and the owners have made massive donations to the politicians to shut down any laws, and it's all been shut down. So they remain above the law. And these kids, it's the largest child trafficking operation in the United States. It's unbelievable. You get free labor out of the kids, and the kids are dying. I mean, they're literally, they have on video, you can watch them abuse kids to death, beat them to death. And so, you know, that's an extreme example only because it's the troubled teen. But you know what? That shit happens in rehabs every day.
Yep.
People, it's all misdiagnosed as, you know, they died in detox. Well, did they? Did they? I've seen shit in rehabs you wouldn't believe.
Yeah.
You know, when I was in a mental hospital at this outpatient clinic, and there was things going on there that I was utterly shocked by, you know? So I think that and obviously I saw things in the halfway houses as a kid, you know,
I'm
and
sure.
my sister, or not my sister, my mother, I can remember she had a nervous breakdown and she quit the job. And I was driving in a station wagon with my mother alone. Again, I don't know where my siblings were. And I asked her, why did you quit? And she said, because I got tired of cleaning up the bloody suicides. From the girl slit her wrists and she had to clean it up. And she said, I just got tired of all that. And I thought, really? There's that many? You know?
Right.
And she said, well, it's a scam. And then my sister was paid off to leave the state because she had insider information about the management and how they're running drugs through the place. And I think about all in a therapeutic community. And she literally was so terrified for her life, she went across the country and moved for 20 years. I mean, these are the things that are happening all over. And this book, if you're watching, I'm holding up the Freedom Model. This 470 pages is Jerry, Michelle, and my journey of debunking, and Stephen, that's right, and Stephen too, of debunking all of the crap we learned. It's our journey out of the cult of the control model.
Yeah.
The overall control model. So if you look at AA, Bill Wilson and Dr. Silkworth came up with one thing to control people: ego deflation at depth. That was their theory. Got to crush the ego. You can't leave any vestige that the person believes they can fix this problem on their own. That was their model.
It's like breaking a horse.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's the same kind of,
yes.
to break a horse, right?
Yeah. And
you abuse it until it'll be compliant.
That's right. That's right. And yeah, it is exactly like that. And everything we see today in these industries, these two parallel industries, the troubled teens and the rehab industry, which basically are parallel to each other. All of it comes from Bill Wilson and Dr. Silkworth. That's where all the control model emanated from. And
Now, I
Yeah.
will say that the addiction treatment industry has also gone in another direction, where it's like the pendulum swing. It's the opposite, which is, oh, okay, we're just going to keep diagnosing mental health issues and just feeling sorry and sad for these people that they're so broken, and then it becomes a super coddling
it becomes a super coddling with medication too.
with medication.
So
So
that's
we're just going to keep people drugged.
yeah. So they talk about that in the documentary as well, how some of the kids were zombified, and they would zombify them. That's what they called it. And this one girl talks about how she would not take her meds, and how they would hold her down, plug her nose, plug her mouth until she was suffocating and would almost black out. And then they'd release her mouth, throw the pill in, and she would basically inhale the pills. And that was how they got her to take her meds. And that was the technique they used to make sure that people took their meds so that they could control them.
Yeah,
And
over medicating people is also abusive, by the way.
well, it killed some of
Yeah.
the kids. When you look into it, you find that they've died that way as well. And they've had 40 suicides just from this one facility of graduates since they closed, and during. So it's just an unbelievable thing that's happening. But I think for me, the thing they're out of this came the freedom model.
Yeah.
I don't think I could have written this unless I had a team of people that lived through it. I don't think, when we did the deprogramming from the 12 steps course that we just designed, I wanted to take the words of Bill Wilson himself. And a lot of it, we use quotes, and I didn't want it to be about me, but I lived through this,
Yeah.
and Michelle did,
Mm-hmm.
and Jerry did, and Steve did, and Ryan did, all the people involved in the freedom model. We lived through this. So it's not conjecture. But here's the beautiful part, because I don't want it to be a downer. I do want people to be informed, but I don't want it to be a downer. I want to say, you don't have to do this. You don't have to go down this path. You can simply read this and never be indoctrinated in anything. This the freedom model is all about you just deciding for yourself to live your life exactly how you want to live it, and that you are the operative force. You are the thinking apparatus. That's what you are. And nobody can take your autonomy from you. They can't go into your mind and change it for you.
Here's the truth about this, okay? Because there is responsibility in knowing that you're free. Okay, there's an amount of
That's a good
personal
point.
responsibility that for some people is a bit intimidating, and we see it online. We see people say, "Well, thank God that that I have this way to live." Well, regardless, you're still choosing. So whether you choose to go down this path and let people direct you,
That you have chosen to be directed.
that's still a choice. And so if that's good for you, great. But open your eyes and open your mind to the fact that you're complicit in abuse. You're complicit in lies. Okay, lying to people, because
But you're only complicit if you know.
that's true.
I want to be very careful. I don't want people thinking we're like the abusers saying it's your fault. Because
No.
in a lot of cases, you
Right.
have no idea.
But
that
you
this
have
is
no
happening.
idea. But you can look around, and I can remember. Let me give an example, because we kind of threw away the powerlessness in the beginning, but we kept all the other nonsense
Yeah, for a
for a
while.
long time.
Yeah.
And I can remember conversations that I had that I am not proud of, but I thought I was doing the right thing for people.
Me too.
Me
too.
Where they felt wrong to me, but I was abusive, like to people that were my sponsees, thinking that I was doing the right thing. I probably listened, God, a couple hundred fifth steps,
Oh yeah, me too.
or fifth step, fourth step.
Yep.
And talking to people about finding their part in being abused and things like that. And I knew there was a part of me that was like, this feels gross.
Yeah, there's no doubt. There's no doubt that if you're taught power like we were,
Yeah,
when you're groomed to become,
it's a good word.
yeah, when you're groomed to become a power monger, you do gaslight people,
Yes.
and you do these things. I did all of that.
Yet thinking that you're helping.
Yes. But to your point, there does come a point where you start to recognize that you're choosing this and that it's wrong. And I think that's where the control model proponents choose money over ethics.
Yes.
Because the beautiful part about the freedom model is we never had money, because we never had an insurance company telling us to control people. We
That's
never
true.
had a third-party reimbursement like Medicaid pushing us in the direction of diagnosing people and incentivizing that sort of tyranny. So because of that,
That's a
when
good
we
point.
were confronted with ourselves and the things we were saying, we had to live with those mistakes.
Yeah.
And I literally lived with my mistakes.
Yeah, you did.
So I took the heat. I was willing to take the heat. So if you do come from a perspective where you're all fucked up the way we were, but you're also researching and you have the ability to be honest, and you put yourself in a position to be measured by outside organizations, which we did, by our peers, by our guests. I always say the guests taught me more than I could ever learn on my own. The only thing I could learn on my own was what I had been taught up to that point, which was very counterproductive and controlling. So, but your dad, by throwing out powerlessness, created a nugget of truth,
right,
that expanded out and ate away at the control model.
It exposed it.
It did. It exposed it. It allowed people to have a voice to say, Mark, I don't believe in the fifth step. I don't think we need to do this. And when I heard that enough, I said, you know what? Let me look into that. And then as a researcher, as a credible researcher, I looked and said, my God, that is bullshit.
Yep.
Oh my God, that's not helping. That's harming. And then I would, or the surrender prayer. Right.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, we did that for years, just like the old timers, right? What a bunch of bullshit. It was just nonsense. And people said, this is, I don't feel right. And then I would think, I don't feel right about this.
Nope.
And then let me look up, let me see, can people get well without God? Oh my God.
They do all the time.
Nearly everybody does, and so what is now commonplace was so uncommon if you come out of the cult. But I am proud of the fact that we listened.
Yes.
Your dad was so smart. He said we should have no rules. And it was so ballsy. He was so ahead of his time. He said we should not have rules. We should just say people aren't powerless, and let's see where that goes, because that is the truth. And man, he freaking stuck with that. I can't tell you how many times, and you were good at it too. I came so directly out of the cult that I had a very controlling nature, very, very power mongering. That was my nature. And you guys would be like, no, we gotta chill out. Let's let people have a voice. We don't need a rules list. Let's just keep moving forward with the research and figure out what works and what doesn't work. And it did change the whole paradigm. We built the freedom model. We figured out, I think it took me a long time to figure all that out.
Oh, it took me a really long time, but I was less controlling by nature.
Yeah, you were less indoctrinated.
Yeah.
I was deeply fucking
all of that felt wrong to me right from the beginning, because I came out, as a child. I was so controlled by fear and abused that none of that felt right to me from the beginning.
And I also think that you left the project for a period of time and raised kids for a number of years in the middle there, where you got perspective. I was immersed in this retreat where I was trying to sort it out from the inside, and I was sorting myself out at the same time. With the people.
Yep.
And that was a brutal, brutal undertaking. It was a brutal undertaking of self-discovery. I really feel like that that watching that documentary for me was the capstone of everything that we've done, because it looked back at where I came from, and holy shit, was it hard for me to watch. It unearthed a lot of tough memories, but we stuck with the research. Where did the research lead? Where did the truth lead? And it led to the freedom model.
Yeah. Yeah. And the freedom model for the family.
Yes.
The first family book that I wrote was like 2010, 2011. And it was an answer to all these family programs that were coming out that were more about selling families these abusive programs, than it was about showing families how to improve their relationships and their communication skills and between each other. And that's what the freedom model for the family was about. It was really a foray into this is what mental autonomy is, and this is why it's important for you when you're interacting with the substance user, this child, this person that you love and you've raised. There is no way to change people by controlling them, truly change them. And because ultimately people change based on their own mental autonomy. And so, but there is effective ways to communicate. There is effective ways to educate, to open people's mind to the possibility they can be happier in a change. Because ultimately, the only way people change is to believe they're going to be happier making the change.
Well, you're bringing up something that's another thing that your father put together that I think is really important. We can take credit for being the first coaching model in the addiction health space, because your dad had figured out, although we didn't have a title for it, we didn't know it was the Socratic method. We didn't know it was, but it was social education, right? He's like, we need to educate people with the facts. And we had to know what the facts are, which was the whole 12 years, right? Figuring out the facts. But he had already built that framework of a technique where you're not leading people, where you allow people the freedom to think for themselves, and the coach just asks questions. Now people can say, well, you can lead by asking questions. Yeah, but you can't go into the mind of somebody. And if you're asking a question, they're going to answer the way they want to answer.
Yeah.
Yeah. Especially if you don't create any distress or duress, anything like that. You're not there with our model. We don't have a dog in the fight of what your answers are going to be. We just want to have a process of self-discovery. And so Jer was really, really, really smart about, do not manipulate people. Yeah. Allow them the freedom to answer the way they want, and don't be judgmental.
And come to their own conclusions.
Yeah.
In mental health, there's a branch of mental health that's positive psychology. And there's so much research that shows that motivational interviewing and cognitive behavioral therapy are far more effective at helping people than medications, than digging into their past.
Yeah. Yes.
So we learned a lot about that side of things too. And that, it's really remarkable when you give people information and you're non-judgmental and you allow them to learn and figure things out on their own, the changes they make are lasting. Go figure.
Yeah.
It's kind of like when raising children. If you say to a kid, clean your room, they are resentful. They don't want to do it. Right. If you create incentives and show them the benefits that they're going to get from cleaning their room, and you allow them to make their own decision, a lot of times they do.
Yeah, they do. I think that there's a place for discipline with children.
Sure.
With children.
Young children.
Yeah, but there's obvious a place for law and order in a society. But that's not what we're talking about with these techniques. These techniques are physical and emotional gaslighting to a level of utter destruction, suicide, death, rape, and con artists taking people for their riches. This is a different level of scumbaggery.
Yeah, it really is.
And please understand, for me, this podcast is probably a little bit more raw, and I'm probably not articulating things because I told Michelle, I said, I want to do this right away.
Yeah.
Because my emotions are all over the place and I want to capture that on this podcast. Because I want to be truthful about what I just discovered. And basically what I discovered is I got a really good picture by watching this of what happened to me. And I don't think I really could frame it all until last night, till I watched that. And I was like, holy shit, my personal life is that school. But in a different way, obviously not as bad, but in some instances it was as bad. I mean, I had a suicide attempt at 10 years old. Who thinks about climbing up on the roof and diving onto a concrete pad by their pool at 10 years old? I was up on the roof after school, nobody around. And it was just by happenstance that I thought of my aunt and that she would find me. And I remember thinking, I can't do that to her because she was the only light in my life. So, that's not just bizarre. That's tragic. That's tragic. And you don't get there at 10 years old to that level of just hopelessness. 10, I was a child, and how did that happen? I never really thought about that articulately. And then watching that, I was able to put all those pieces together, and wow, it was wild. But I did want to paint a good face on the end of this. And that is, I'm really proud of our team, all of us having gone through all that crap and coming out with the truth.
Yeah.
That took courage, man. And a level of dedication that I don't know many people that have. That's
and now shouting
my own horn.
Yeah. Now shouting it from the rooftops, the truth and going against, the grain. I mean, going against our culture, going against what society believes. Our work is too important to not do it, because all of this is still going on, and there's huge big money in it. And we're just here saying, look, you can avoid all of that. You don't have to become part of it.
The whole recovery cartel, you can avoid it and be a human being living your life fully empowered within yourself as an autonomous thinking person. That's your gift that you were given at birth. Is the human mind, the free thinking, free will oriented thing called the human mind. That's you. That's who you are. And when I discovered that about myself, my life took off.
Me too.
And please understand, now that I'm on this side of that, so that first 12 years was brutal. Then the last 20 some odd years has been wonderful. It's real important for people to know that once I discovered the fullness of this book, basically that was after the 12 years.
And then it took a while to write it.
It took a long time to articulate it in paper, but we knew it intuitively.
We did.
And that's when, I raised my family. I have a successful marriage. I have the things, and my kids are very capable children because I allowed them to think.
Yes.
But I guided them quietly. But me and my wife were a unified front. We parented well, as best we could. There were times that were hard or whatever.
Oh yeah, everybody goes through hard times in any long-term marriage.
But I think that having gone through this experience and understanding human behavior to such a high level, like we do, having survived the darkest of dark, having survived drinking myself nearly to death, having gone to jail, having lived through a cult experience and being literally living in it.
Yeah. Growing up in it,
and then extricating myself and with friends who were also in that same boat. It's a remarkable fucking story.
It really
That's
is.
a remarkable thing. And out of that, that you can be free.
You can be free. So listen, if you're a parent of a troubled teen or young adult and you're like, well, great, now you're telling me that there's what am I supposed to do now? I can't send them to treatment. You can call us.
Yeah.
You can call us. We can help.
Yeah.
We've been working with families for 34 years. And yeah, we have a solution.
And we've raised kids,
And
successful
we've raised
kids.
kids. We have we
They're all
have
adults now.
They're between the two of us. There's 6 young adults making their way in the world.
And now we're grandparents as well.
We are.
It's wonderful.
It is amazing. So okay, how can you reach us? If you're watching, you can see in the top corner 1-888-424-2626. You can email us at info@thefreedommodel.org. You can check out our brand new website, thefreedommodel.org.
It's going live tonight. Well, actually, when this is posted, it'll already
be live. And we're wearing our green because it's St. Patty's Day. So party responsibly, I suppose. If you're Irish like me.
That's right. Have some green beer.
Oh, yuck.
Some Irish whiskey.
Irish whiskey. There you go.
I'll be having some of that.
All right, everybody. I hope you have a great couple of weeks. And look, if you have an experience where that you think would be good for our show and you want to be interviewed by us, you want to contact us, call us at that number or email us at info@thefreedommodel.org, and we'll have a conversation.
And please forward this podcast to anybody that you know that is struggling, has been to multiple rehabs. Please. We want to get word out. Let them know. Go on Amazon, get our book, right? Get the Freedom Model. It'll change their life if they're a reader. Remember, we have the audio book. We can save lives together, folks.
We have the online program. We just had a great live Q&A.
Oh yeah, we did.
We just did yesterday. It was tremendous.
Yeah. So yeah, we have the online program too. What else do we have? We have coaching. We have the online program. We have our masterclass.
We have the 12-step deprogramming. So you're trying to leave AA. You're afraid. You're worried that, that it's just going to lead you back on a path to heavy drinking or drug. No.
Yeah, that's
do the 12-step deprogramming course. Very inexpensive.
$50.
$50, and it'll maybe take you a week to get through it. It could take you a day, honestly. If you're a binge watcher, you could get through it in a day. But
so this is all pre-recorded videos and seminars that we do, and it's all Michelle and I. We teach all of it. And all coaching is one-on-one. We don't do any group anything.
That's right.
And it's
no
private.
Group anything. Everything's private.
You can always join us for the workshop. Come up here to upstate New York and we'll help you.
Yep. All right. And don't forget, we have a mobile app that has some free content on it. You can go right to our website to download that as well. Or you can get it in the App Store, Apple or Android app stores or Google app stores, whatever.
And one last thing, we have the coalition. So if you do want to promote the Freedom Model to others, join the coalition. Go on the website. I think it's under media. I'm not sure. You'll find it. It'll say coalition. You join, you fill out the contact form. We will forward you a memorandum that you can also forward to other people that gives a macro view of how the Freedom Model can change society back to sanity and to people knowing that they're autonomous.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone. We'll see you in a couple weeks.
Take care.
Are you struggling with a drug or alcohol problem, but you don't want to go to rehab or group meetings? Well, that's why we created the non-12-step Freedom Model coaching program in 2011. Through video conferencing on Zoom or Skype, you can work privately with a certified Freedom Model coach from your home or office on your schedule. And here's the best part. With the Freedom Model, you'll never be labeled an addict or an alcoholic, and we won't tell you to go to 12-step meetings or hamper your life with endless recovery rituals. Instead, you can learn exactly why addiction isn't a disease and how you can solve the problem for good and move on with your life. Do you want to be completely free from your addiction? Do you want to never have to attend meetings, rehabs, or addiction counseling ever again? And do you want to solve your problem from the comfort of home? Then call us at 888-424-2626 to talk with a Freedom Model coach today and experience the Freedom Model difference.